In her most recent CNN town hall, Elizabeth Warren had an interesting remark to say about Bernie Sanders' track record on the issue of superdelegates. Let's take a look, then we'll fact check.
An account manager for a software company here in Charleston. He is currently supporting Senator Sanders. Jason.
Hi, Jason.
Hey now, Senator Warren. Welcome to Charleston.
Thank you.
During the Nevada debate, you and every other candidate on the stage, except for Bernie, hello somebody, indicated that the candidate with the plurality of delegates should not necessarily be the nominee.
Uh-huh.
This essentially means the will of the voters could be denied by the superdelegates and the DNC, which is basically undemocratic. And in my opinion, is a bunch of baba booey, to put it politely. Can you explain why the will of the voters should not matter if no candidate reaches a majority of delegates?
So you do know that was Bernie's position in 2016.
Not necessarily, no.
Yeah.
He won 22 states, so he went to the convention
that was
for his
Bernie's
voters.
position in 2016, that it should not go to the person who had a plurality.
Okay.
So, and remember, his last play was to superdelegates. So the way I see this is you write the rules before you know where everybody stands, and then you stick with those rules. So for me, Bernie had a big hand in writing these rules. I didn't write them, but Bernie did when they were putting together the 2016 platform for the Democratic Convention. Those are the rules that he wanted to write and others wanted to write. Everybody got in the race thinking that was the set of rules. I don't see how come you get to change it just because he now thinks there's an advantage to him for doing that.
So you just saw there Elizabeth Warren claiming that back in 2016, Bernie Sanders was the one who believed that superdelegates should flip over to his side. The problem, though, with this claim is that it's not exactly right. I want to show you a clip of Bernie Sanders talking on the issue back in 2016.
But when a candidate, whether it's Clinton or myself, she demolished us in Mississippi, I think the superdelegates should support her in Mississippi. But when in states like Colorado and in many other states, Utah, etc., we win the overwhelming majority of vote, I think those superdelegates should go with their state.
So you just saw there Bernie Sanders' actual position on the issue, and you can see that it's not exactly what Elizabeth Warren was claiming that it was. And, this actually is something that really annoys me because you could argue that technically she wasn't lying, right? Technically, Bernie Sanders was playing to the superdelegates because he was arguing towards the end there that, look, those superdelegates in the states that I won should go to me, and the superdelegates from the states that Clinton won should go to her. So Bernie Sanders' position was never that he thought that, oh, it's okay for me to, sort of negotiate and try to flip away the superdelegates from voters. Bernie Sanders' view was always that he believed that the voters should finally have a say, which is exactly the way that the way that Bernie Sanders fought for the rules to be written. But the best compromise that he was able to get, or at least that the sort of people who were involved in the committee were able to get, was that, look, they're not involved in the first ballot, but they can be involved in the second ballot. So the idea that Bernie Sanders was over here cheering on the rules at the time and then suddenly flipped isn't actually right. And, of course, Bernie Sanders is known to be consistent on the issues, and that's why Elizabeth Warren is trying to bring that up as a legitimate kind of criticism, like, well, oh, you think Bernie's so honest? Look at him here. But Bernie Sanders has been consistent on the issues. And, the thing that actually really, really gets under my skin about this answer is notice the structure of the argument. Elizabeth Warren's essential argument is, well, Bernie did it, so why can't I, right? I mean, Elizabeth Warren's argument is, in every other form of life, that structure of argument, that form of argument, well, Johnny did it, so why can't I? That is considered childish in every other sphere of life. But in politics, for whatever reason, that's considered a slam dunk. Oh, you really got him. He's being cynical, and so it's okay for me to be cynical. No. Like, this is just a personal pet peeve of mine. It really gets under my skin when I hear politicians turning around and like, well, they did it, so it's like, if you were at work and your boss was listening to you making those kinds of arguments, you'd get fired. If you were on the playground in 5th grade, you got, like the teacher ignored you and didn't listen to you if you started making those kinds of arguments, because it's universally recognized as a childish form of argument. But for whatever reason, you do it in politics. Oh, that's really good political maneuvering. Wow, you're so brilliant. Wow, look at you pointing out their cynicism. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now, I want to show you this is by the way part of the reason why this is such a big problem for Elizabeth Warren right now. If you look at this most recent poll, I believe this was just released today, you can see Bernie Sanders leading Elizabeth Warren in her own home state. Like, I mean, oh my, I didn't even expect this. Now, there were a few polls a couple of days ago that we did see where Bernie Sanders was like 1.2 points ahead. But like, you look at this poll, like he's not just leading, like Bernie Sanders is leading in Elizabeth Warren's home state. I did not even expect this personally. And if you go to the 538 average, you can see there's been multiple polls now. There's a +1 poll, there's a +2 poll, now that +8 poll that you just saw there. I mean, it's like it is getting real for Elizabeth Warren. Bernie Sanders is holding some rallies in Massachusetts. I think that's why Elizabeth Warren isn't too happy with Bernie Sanders right now. I don't know if you saw the clip, but there was a clip after the most recent debate. Again, Elizabeth Warren was refusing to shake Bernie Sanders' hand. I don't think that she's particularly happy with Bernie Sanders right now. And if you look at the 538 prediction model, you can see here Bernie Sanders is forecasted to win an average of 26% of the vote. In 80% of simulations, he wins between 17 and 35%. And here, this is the important part, he has a 3 and 5 or 60% chance of winning the most votes. Warren, who is the most likely second, has only a 21% chance of winning. Now, obviously, that is not something that Elizabeth Warren is particularly happy about. Elizabeth Warren obviously doesn't want to lose her home state. That's pretty embarrassing. Usually when you lose your home state, that means, hey, look, it's time to drop out. You can't win your home state. How are you actually going to play this thing? I mean, like, seriously, how are you going to even try to play this thing at the convention if you can't even argue to the delegates that you didn't win your home state? Bernie Sanders is literally more popular than you in your own home state, and you think that you can ride the wave and be a unity ticket? I mean, it's very, very skeptical. And by the way, so this is leading a number of progressives, a number of Bernie supporters to sort of start to speculate a little bit on, well, what is Warren's sort of end game here? Because it doesn't seem like Warren has a clear pathway of being a unity candidate. If she loses her home state, she only gets like 5, maybe 10% at best of the delegates. How is she actually expecting to flip the thing from Bernie? And so some Bernie supporters, some progressives are turning around and saying that Elizabeth Warren really is trying to play this idea as a unity ticket and try to steal it away from Bernie, even though it wouldn't be a very effective argument. Some Bernie supporters are starting to think, well, look, Elizabeth Warren, like, maybe she isn't, like, she's clearly trying to beat Bernie in some way, but maybe she's not trying to steal it away from Bernie. Maybe what Elizabeth Warren is trying to do is, she'll give Bernie the delegates, but then sort of force compromises from Bernie, maybe force Bernie to pick her as VP or something like that in order to guarantee, something like that. So there's sort of a debate right now in terms of what Elizabeth Warren is really trying to do for the progressive movement. And the other possibility is, yeah, she is completely open to a brokered convention where they steal it and give it to someone else like a Buttigieg or a Biden or a Klobuchar or something crazy like that. But then what they'll do is they'll put Elizabeth Warren on the ticket for VP or something like that, because in their mind, Elizabeth Warren is super progressive. And so that's to like compensate for the fact that they stole it from Bernie. So they put her on, as the VP. So, it's one of those weird situations where I don't necessarily think that even Elizabeth Warren in her heart of hearts thinks that she could really convince them to put her at the top of the ticket, but maybe she thinks that she could broker something at the convention and be a VP pick, regardless of whether or not they steal it away from Bernie and give it to a moderate. Then they, sort of tack on Elizabeth Warren as the VP in order to, try to try to fix the broken bridges supposedly to the progressive movement, which, by the way, will not work. That will not satisfy us, putting Elizabeth Warren as the VP to try to compensate for stealing it from Bernie. But maybe that's her plan, and maybe she thinks that she could force Bernie Sanders to pick her as VP and then, convince moderates that that's okay or something crazy like that. I think that that's more likely her play. That side of things is more likely than her at this point thinking that she could really get at the top of the ticket even through a brokered convention. I could be wrong. Let me know in the comments. But in any way, if you like the video, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button and consider subscribing. Thanks.